Thanks. Can I get number 2?
Minister, in the previous version of the budget, there were several measures to cushion the poor in the light of the VAT increase. Does the scaling of the VAT increase negate the need to give protection to the same extent? In other words, will there be a scaling down of those?
Can you raise your voice a bit?
I'm asking, with the scaling of the VAT increase, will there be a scaling down in the protection measures that were built into the previous version of the budget to protect in the light of the VAT increase?
Thanks. Number 3. You may come in, introduce yourself, the organization you're representing.
Good day, I'm Tshepo Mongwai, SABC News. I just want to ask the Minister if you are quite certain that these budgets that you're going to be presenting will be approved by Parliament. And what is it that you are doing to ensure that you don't go through the same hurdles this week? And then the second question is, what are some of the practical steps that you'll be following from now on leading up to the 21st of May in terms of budget process?
Thank you so much. Over to you, Minister.
You had projected, but when I knew this question is going to arise. Let me put it in proper context, first and foremost. First and foremost, and put it in proper context. We are we're dealing with uncharted terrain. As you are aware, we used to have a budget with the dominating party being the ANC. And one was prepare the budget, you show it, go to Parliament, and the ANC will pass the budget. Now, we are in a coalition government. That coalition government takes in, two forms. One, there's a GNU in cabinet, but in Parliament, there's a number of political parties. Therefore, when you table a money bill, Section 77 of the Constitution empowers me to do that. I was within my constitutional parameters to table a money bill. What then happened, because of the nature of the coalition politics, we couldn't find consensus, both in cabinet and in the legislature. I'm not going to put blame on anybody, but that process on its own, because all of us are new in this thing, was messy. That process on its own is messy. We all have learned from it. All of us have learned it because we might have gone to it not anticipating the kind of challenges we faced. Now, it would be unfair to say to me, having performed in terms of my constitutional obligations of proposing a money bill in Parliament and get into an environment of multi-party environment which created large attention, and then say, I must resign. At this stage, where I sit, I think in that context, people must understand this thing in that context. By the way, on this question, let me conclude by saying that decision does not lie with me. It lies with the President. But I'm mindful of the fact that the President has been participating he himself in this process, he understands the nature of the challenges we've been experiencing in dealing with this problem. So I don't think I can answer that question and say that's my intention at the moment. No. There are two aspects to the second question, questioning the impact. The first one was, which one are going to be reversed? All of those that were related to caution the impact as a result of that, those will be removed because there's no longer VAT now. But the strategic thrust of cushioning the impact on the poor in terms of dealing with social services which affect the poor, which is education, health, and social protection, those remain the strategic focus of government. Will the bill be approved by Parliament? I can't second guess Parliament. I must respect Parliament's autonomy and say we'll approach Parliament in the manner we've done with the respect it deserves. And our duty is to present a case to Parliament to approve this one. And I think that's what we're working on. When you talk about the steps, what are the steps we're doing? We're trying to construct a budget between now and the 21st, and those steps are outlined in the press statement, so that we can produce a saleable document to Parliament. That's the kind of work we're trying to do now. And given this complexity of governments, we've got to work hard in such we can produce a document which will be saleable. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Can I take the second round of questions? I have number 1, number 2, and number 3. Over to you, Hilary.
Minister, are you looking at any asset sales to like the revenue gap?
Assets. You said asset sale, right?
Which will be left by the withdrawal of the VAT increases, but also potentially by lower economic growth. Thanks.
Thanks. Number 2.
Just a few practical questions for clarity, ministers and DG maybe. The money bill is no longer in play. It has been scrapped now because we are starting with the budget entirely from scratch. This is not a tinkering, an amendment here and there. The entire budget is being reworked. You just give clarity on that. And then you wrote to the Speaker, I believe, yesterday regarding this 21 May date. Has this date now been confirmed, or does it have to go to the programming committee just in terms of the process around the date? What is that? And then And then in terms of the timelines that we're now working with, according to the PFMA, this needs to be wrapped up by July. Is that still the case? DG, maybe you can just walk us through what the deadlines are ordinarily, and now that we're here, given that we're past April and the financial year, what are the implications for this delay, for lack of a better word? Thank you very much.
Thanks. Just before number 3 comes in, can the GCIS technical team assist? The colleagues online cannot hear at all. If you can just assist in that technical glitch. Can I get number 3?
Thank you. It's Kadel Sohoto from Kaya 959. Minister, how does the reversal of the VAT, perhaps, the reversal of the VAT hike affect Treasury's credibility with investors and ratings agencies, especially perhaps after the budget was tabled with that revenue measure as a key pillar?
Thanks. What I will do before I come back on here, Minister is going to respond in the DG, and then I'm going to take online questions, and then we'll do the last round. Okay? All right. Over to you, Minister.
You want to take with the July deadline? Yeah. Will we still pay people? On this simple question, do we have ISIL sales in the back of our mind for this purpose? No. Could there be ISIL sales? There's a possibility, but we're not factoring that here. There's ongoing work in different areas where there is sports and so on, but it's not something which is taken into account in this thing. The practical question about programming, we have approached the Speaker for the 21st. As I understand, the Speaker is taking that to the Programming Committee today. Your second part of your question, the DG will deal with it. He's also going to add on the credibility issue. Let me say why we are not worried. Why we are not worried. Really, the credibility issue is not going to be the reversal of VAT. The credibility issue is going to arise of the final product, the final budget that's adopted. Whether that budget will reflect fiscal sustainability and fiscal prudence, that's where the credibility issue will arise. Mind you, all these rating agencies and investor community are used to a chaos of coalition governments, particularly in the advanced economies. For them, it's not something new. Not something new. I've spent some time as well after my chaos to try and understand how people work and read, how people work in this environment. It's clearly we're not alone. And the investor community is not their worry. Their worry is going to be what is the final product? To what extent is that final product going to reflect fiscal prudence and fiscal sustainability? Did you want to add on these 2 points?
Thank you, Minister. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. On those 2 questions, in terms of the timelines, I believe the question was, it's actually not the PFMA, it's the Money Bills and Related Matters Act, Section 10, subsection 7, that introduces a requirement for the appropriation bill to be passed within the first 4 months of the start of the new financial year. So the 1st of April plus 4 months, that's the actual deadline that needs to be met, and we will obviously be working with Parliament to ensure that we can meet that deadline. Secondly, in terms of the execution and the credibility, I think just 2 points to add on to what the Minister said. The first point is that you'll know that the PFMA does allow provision for spending to continue. So fortunately, we have a provision in the PFMA that says that the departments can continue to spend in line with the previous year's budget up until certain limits. And so from a spending point of view, the business of government is continuing. But getting to the broader question about fiscal credibility, which the Minister has touched on, we had an opportunity to engage with investors on the sidelines of the spring meetings in Washington last week. And the feedback from investors is exactly that. Fiscal credibility is measured by both the investors and by the rating agencies as a function of how effective we are as custodians of public finances. And so that is in turn a function of whether we meet our fiscal goals or not.
So what they will be looking to us for, and for the government as a whole, is are we able to meet the fiscal goals that we've set for ourselves, and those we have outlined over the last few years, and we have consistently met those. And they are, amongst others, a growing primary surplus, where revenue exceeds non-interest expenditure, a debt to GDP ratio that is going to peak in 25-26, as well as shifting the composition of spending towards infrastructure and other growth-enhancing types of spending. So for them, the test is, will the new budget that we are going to table meet those fiscal goals? And to the extent that it does, fiscal credibility is intact. To the extent that it doesn't, it starts putting fiscal credibility under threat. Thank you.
Thank you, DG. I'm now going to be taking questions online, and then I'll come back here. We've got an online question from Carol Payton from News 24. Minister, doctors and other health workers in Gauteng and KZN were not paid at the end of April. Is this the fiscal crisis that you sought to avoid materializing? The second question comes from Business Day, Linda Enso. What potential areas has Treasury identified for possible savings, and did any of these emerge from discussions with political parties? If so, which ones? And the last question is from Full View from Lihlonono. Can the minister clarify if there was out-of-court settlement with the DA over the VAT hike? Also, is it true that 2.4 million was wasted on service providers for the postponement of the budget? Lastly, it's a comment. Treasury needs to reassess and rethink budgeting processes by instituting a consultative and transparent approach that incorporates enhanced governance as well as stakeholder engagement. And the last question is from Sophie Mokwena from the SABC. The budget allocation can lead to governments collapsing where there is power sharing. We saw that in Germany. Now that you have the first experience in relation to the challenges of the budget in the GNU, how are you going to handle the MTF in future? And are you looking to presenting new proposal on the budget process, looking at the international trends? So those are all the online questions.
Okay, 2.4. The providers, they got DG. Now I don't run it operations. The minister and Muslim, I don't run operations. I cannot, at this stage, answering Carol's question. I'm not familiar. I'm not aware that the doctors that have not been paid. It would be strange. 1 month in the financial year, people have run out of cash. They can't pay doctors. They can't pay anything. I find it difficult to answer that. I don't think it's a reflection of any financial crisis of some sort, because if there were any problems, they would reflect down the line in a couple of months in the financial year, not in the first month of the financial year. I don't know whether you are aware of that. The potential savings, no, it's too early to tell you that. What am I going to say on the 21st? I must have something I can brag about on the 21st. I can't tell you now. On the 21st, I've got to say, we have money to save this, to save this. If there are any savings, I don't know. We can't say that now. That's the reason the DG doesn't want me to speak to newspaper. The out-of-court settlement, let me just outline a bit. The DA went to court to apply for 3 things. The first application was that the proceedings of the Portfolio Committee of Finance on the fiscal framework be declared invalid. The second application was to declare Section 7, subsection 4 of the VAT Act constitutionally invalid. The third was pending the declaration of Section 7.4 as invalid in terms of the Constitution, I be interdicted from implementing the 5%. Now, it's quite important to trace this history of the earlier application by the DA. And then they were joined by EFF. We then announced on the 24th, when Washington, so there was a time difference. So when it reached South Africa, it was 12 midnight. We announced a reversal of that. Immediately, the DA filed a supplemental affidavit. In the supplemental affidavit, they say new developments have taken place. The minister has reversed that. But as the DA, we believe that that reversal won't be effective before the 1st of May because the rates bill will not be passed. Okay? So we filed a responding affidavit to that, which said, insofar as they touched on the constitutionality of that, we still dispute that. But insofar as they say they are applying for the suspension of the rate increase, we have reversed it in any event. We have got no intention to oppose that part. Okay? The legislature says the implication of the minister's reversal is such that the minister will have to put up a new fiscal framework. Therefore, we are not defending the reversal of the fiscal framework dispute anymore, because we are going to replace it in any event. We then settled on those two bases. The first one, the legislature agreed not necessarily for declaration of invalidity of the proceedings, but for the setting aside of those provisions, given the fact that there's a new fiscal framework which is coming. We also settled with them on the basis that we were not opposing their application for the suspension of the rate, because in any event we have agreed to reverse it. On 2.4, I don't even know the amount, to be honest. The DG is an accounting officer. He may know that I can't even burden the deputy ministers. The closest to that may be Deputy Minister Sarupen, because he is in charge of corporate services. But I'm not putting you on the block with the DADM. So DG will deal with that question. Consultation. I said we have learned some lessons. I think all of us. Once the budget is passed by Parliament finally, we intend developing a new process which takes into account the current environment. And that process, what consultation machinery we need to take in place and what process we need to take to develop. And that consultation in our mind has got to start in September, before the medium-term budget policy statement. Because the medium-term budget policy statement is a key milestone, because it shapes the content of the February budget. So we'll be developing a process of consultation in this regard, particularly in the GNU. Sophie's question about the MTF, what was it?
The budget allocation can lead to governments collapsing where there is power sharing. We saw that in Germany. Now that you have the first experience in relation to the challenges of budget within the JNU, how are you going to handle the MTF in future? And are you looking to presenting new proposals on the budget process, looking at international trends?
Yes, that's precisely the point I'm saying. We have now agreed that we need to find a new process of consultation which must start latest September, so that by the time we table the medium-term budget policy statement, there's broadly an agreed approach on the budget over the medium term. So we're discussing the details of that is something we will announce at the appropriate time. Thank you.
The Minister is the last one. Is the Minister considering canning the TERS increase to possibly unlock funds? That's from MoneyWeb. TERS.
Doing what?
Are you planning to cancel
Which tariff?
the TERS?
I think
Oh,
they're talking about the UIF,
UIF
TERS program.
huh? Oh, oh.
TERS program.
No. Okay. No. The TERS is governed by a different minister under a different legislation. There's a process which is looking at what is called active labor market processes in government. And that process is led by is a cabinet committee led by Minister Math. We are looking at how to integrate all of these labor market policies into a coherent policies. As part of that, TERS will be part of those policies that are going to be taken into account. We will then, in my view, have an omnibus bill which makes amendments to the different legislation as we did with FATF, which will then make the necessary legislative changes. For now, the UIF is governed by a different act. We can't simply change it like other colleagues were saying. But to replace that, take the UIFs and take the skills, or take all of these things. It's nice to have. They sit with good money. But they're governed by a different legislation. For me to take money from those things, there need to be a change in legislation. We can't simply grab them. Okay? Thank you. DG? Upatela 2.4 million. 2.4 million, I didn't know.
Thank you, Minister. So, in terms of the other questions, just in terms of the cost of the department, the costs that are incurred in terms of the budget process are mainly related to things like travel, accommodation, printing, advertising, and so on. And so the costs associated with the past two budgets does not constitute fruitless and wasteful expenditure. However, what we have done and what we will continue to do for the next budget is to see how we can further limit those costs, because we are mindful of the fact that these costs, as they are being incurred and as we are doing multiple budgets, they can be viewed in a very negative light. So, for example, for the next budget that we are tabling, we are going to cut down on the printing, for example. Some of the documents will only be made available electronically, and we will cut down on other aspects of the budget process as well to ensure that we are able to generate savings in that regard. There was also a question about the process, the budget process, and let me just talk about it from a Treasury perspective. We are constantly making changes to enhance the budget process. Some of those changes were introduced in the last budget cycle, where we changed, for example, the configuration of the technical committees that discuss some of the budget process, some of the budget elements, in order to create a more inclusive process and outcome. And we are currently considering further amendments to the technical process, which we can talk about further when we table the budget on the 21st. But they will include things like how we embed more concretely processes around spending reviews, for example, into the budget process itself, so that those spending efficiencies can come through more clearly. Just to add on the question of doctors in KZN, that question is probably better directed at the provincial treasury over there. But from our perspective, we are not aware of payments that are not being made. And two, as I indicated earlier, Section 29 of the PFMA actually allows spending to continue to take place by departments, even in the absence of an appropriation bill. So from our perspective, the fact that we do not yet have an appropriation bill that's been passed should not affect the ability of that particular province or any other province to meet its obligations in terms of compensation of employees' spending. Thank you.
Thank you, DG. I'm now going to take the last round here in Pretoria, and then I'm also going to take the last round online, and then we'll close our briefing. I have identified only 3 hands. Is it really 3? So that I check I'm not leaving anybody behind. Okay, it's 4. Right, number 1, number 2 in red, number 3, can't say number 4.
Nice number 4. She's coming again.
Okay, all right. In that order.
With everything else that happened, what, Minister, would you say was some of the lesson learned from what happened with regards to what happened in Parliament and the issue of VAT?
Thank you. Number 2.
Good afternoon, Kopano Gumbi from Reuters. Minister, in the last 2 iterations of the budget, you said that while there were new and persistent spending pressures, you still had a commitment to fiscal consolidation and to stabilizing generally South Africa's budget. Can the same be said? Should we expect that same sentiment coming through in this upcoming budget? And then, secondly, you say you're in consultation with political parties before you present in Parliament. Now, you also mentioned that was critical in order to facilitate some of these new spending pressures that were essential. Does that now mean, when we are looking at Budget 3.0, that we're going to see expenditure cuts that was asked for from all of the various role players, so that you can balance some of the new spending pressure with expenditure cuts? Thank you.
Kopano, but your last leg of your question, Minister has probably responded to earlier on. Remember, he said he will not be able to say anything regarding what's to come on the budget. And now yeah, it's okay, but that has already been covered. All right. Number 3.
Minister, just a question of clarity. You said you've agreed to start this consultation process in September already. That agreement, who agreed? Is it between you and Treasury? Is it in the GNU or you and the legislator? Who are the parties to the agreement?
Thanks. I also think that question, Minister was saying futuristic, but he can probably clarify. I don't think he was saying there's an existing agreement in place. Number 4.
Just on the head of the budget office being on sabbatical, is there any consideration around recalling him, asking him to maybe stay that sabbatical, and is he agreeable if that conversation has happened? Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, DG, and then Minister.
Are there any lessons learned? The first one is that we're in a coalition government. We've got to do things different. And therefore, a budget is an important political tool. It's going to be required, it's going to be important that we maximize kind of unity around a budget as a political tool. That's the lesson, which means we'll try and find as early as possible to craft an agreement with a number of political parties. Yes, I said the VAT was occasions party requirement to find new spending priorities. Let me take a step back. In October, when we tabled the medium-term budget policy statement, we kind of signal what the budget is going to be in February, and give concrete meaning to that by giving allocations to the department in December, which is called the baseline allocations. So that kind of budget is intact with the departments. They've got their baseline allocations. DG's committee of technical, which include the DG in the president's, by the way, that committee assesses submission by departments. It's a technical committee, no political agendas, nothing. What they then say, okay, you've got your baseline, fine, but here are the other priorities that are emerging from the discussions with departments. Huge amount. They said over the MTF, those priorities amount to about 112 billion rand. So what we're trying to attend with the VAT is to, how do we make sure that we can attend to those priorities in education, health, and so on, particularly this issue of doctors, unemployed doctors. Health alone, we made the point that they've lost about 9,000 workers in the last financial year, and there's no money to replace that. Health alone have accumulated accruals. In other words, they've not been paying people for over the past few years on goods and services. Surely then we need to kind of bring that kind of thing to an end. And those are actually health centers that support the poor people of this country. So we're trying to deal with this issue. In the light of these changes, in the statement we issued on the 24th, we make one general comment, and that comment is there will be a need for adjustment. Now, when we talk about adjustments on what, mind you, this amount is an increase over the baseline. That point must be taken into account. What we're making an adjustment on the additional increase. The baselines of department will remain. They will be. We're not talking about cuts for now. I don't know, as we look at the numbers, what that picture will look like. But we're saying there will be a need for an adjustment on these increases, because it seems if that which was intended to pay for these increases is not available. Now, I can't answer that question directly. Cleo is saying it's a matter of what the DG doesn't want me to talk about. The agreement, no, is an internal process, internal in Treasury. We've agreed. It's a lesson we said, in the light of what we've learned, we need to find a way, agreed amongst ourselves, we need to find a way, how do we craft a proposal, make sure that we can mobilize support for the budget beforehand. And that's going to require, therefore, we have agreement with others, but that's a strategy agreed amongst ourselves. To recall, the head of the budget office, I doubt if Edgar will agree to that. Because Edgar made a decision long time ago, even before the elections. Even before the elections, he firmed up his mind. Even last year, we're trying to say, hey, in this mess, I would not prefer to reconsider it. So he's firmed up mind, he went to rest, he went to take sabbatical, and so on and so on. But I don't know, that is his boss.
I'll make a comment.
That is his boss. He can make a better comment on that.
Minister Carol Payton wants you to stay there. She's asking, you belong to a political party that loves to add more spending items but doesn't like taxes. When you talk about lessons, do you think your party has learned a lesson on this one?
That's above my pay grade. Mr. Mbalula is better placed to answer that question. Mr. Mbalula is better placed. He's got a press conference at 2. It would be useful that question is directed to him.
Thank you, Minister. And then another one. MKP has asked for a motion of vote of no confidence over you. What is your view? That's from Heart FM.
No, I've not read the Constitution. I don't know whether there's any provision in the Constitution for a vote of no confidence on a minister. I've not read the Constitution. All I do know is a vote of confidence to on the president. If that president falls, and then I fall, I know that.
Thank you, Minister.
But for me, for as long as he wants me to work, I think I'm going to work.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Let me just add a few remarks on the issue of the head of the budget office. So let me answer this in 2 ways. The first is to say that Treasury officials going on sabbatical is in fact a good thing. It happens regularly, and it's very important. It's a very important part of the culture of our institution, which is that people are given an opportunity to spend time outside of the institution and then come back in with renewed energy and vigor and ideas and make a better contribution. It is also consistent with a broader public service regulations that allow for officials to be able to take sabbaticals and then come back. Incidentally, we've had over the last few years a number of Treasury officials that have either gone to study at Harvard or that have taken other kinds of sabbaticals to do their research, and then they come back into the system. So I think it's important to start with that perspective. The second part of it is that whenever a senior official leaves the Treasury, even if it is only for 6 months, as is the case with Edgar, it always is a loss for the institution during that period. Fortunately, Edgar leaves behind, the head of the budget office leaves behind a very capable team that he has helped to build over the last few years, including a new head of fiscal policy, which is a very key person in putting the budget together. And this is incidentally also the person that returned from Harvard not too long ago. And so the idea that Edgar should come back, or the head of the budget office should come back to manage the process, is something that we have not even entertained. There are capable teams in that division that can manage it. And then also to make the final point that the budget is not something that is done by the budget office alone in the National Treasury. The Economic Policy Division does the macro forecast. The Asset and Liability Management Division does the borrowing projections. The Tax Policy Division does all the revenue estimates and projections. The Intergovernmental Relations team does the division of revenue process. The Public Finance team does all the estimates of expenditure for the national departments and the entities and so on. So it's a multi-divisional process that is coordinated by the head of the budget office, and we are very confident that Marumo, who has stepped in to Edgar's shoes over the next few months while he's on sabbatical and before he returns in 6 months' time, is more than capable to be able to manage this process under, of course, the guidance of the Minister, the DMs, myself, and the rest of the Treasury Exco. Thank you.
Thank you. Because I'm led by a very generous team, I just want to check if there are any last round questions before I propose closure to the briefing. Remember, the Minister says it's all yours. So, Reuters. The fiscal consolidation, can you repeat it?
Will this budget still have that commitment to fiscal consolidation that you've spoken about in previous budgets? Thanks.
Yeah, but if you read the statement, I think it's there. The second last paragraph and probably even on the last one. Yeah.
Let's repeat it.
Okay. Minister, come on.
Is there somebody else?
So you're all covered. Cool. The minister's going to come.
It's worth repeating. Worth repeating.
Yeah.
I think it's worth repeating. One of the things the DG was talking about when we were talking about investor community was they judged us about meeting our fiscal targets. We on this table, that's our job, is to protect the institutional integrity of National Treasury and its credibility. And that credibility is judged by its ability to craft a budget which, among other things, meet the developmental objectives of our people, but at the same time meet its fiscal objectives. So, fiscal consolidation is still in place. It's still in place. We've got to kind of have a conversation as a nation. Have a conversation as a nation. Should we be paying the amount of money that we're paying on debt service costs? I made an indication earlier that now we've reached a stage where we're paying R1 billion per day on debt service costs. We're also borrowing R2 billion a day. 50% of what we're borrowing per day, it goes into debt service cost. That's a conversation we need to have as a nation, that all of that is beginning to crowd out investment in these developmental objectives. So that's the thing that we need to be talking about. Over time, if we're not dealing with this issue, we're going to the IMF cap in hand. That's not what we want. You know, Kristalina was telling us in the IMF, you're part of that meeting, did you? When she says, there are about 20 countries that are queuing for balance of payment support from the IMF. Things are getting worse. We should not allow that in our lifetime. We should make sure that in our lifetime we can reduce the debt so that we can reduce its impact on crowding out services. That's critical. And therefore, fiscal consolidation is an instrument to achieve that objective. Bye-bye. Thank you. Nice meeting you today. I love you all.
Thank you, colleagues. We've now come to the end of the briefing. As you know, we are on a closed period up until the 21st of May. So no media questions as from, we're done. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister and the panel. May you have a lovely day.